my Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, ladies and gentlemen, please rise and welcome our Lord Mayor, Councillor Colin Cook.
Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome and please sit down. I have had a wonderful year as your Lord Mayor. There have been high points, most recently 32 metres above Bond City Centre on a fire engine ladder. There have been low points, failing to light the menorah candles 5 feet above Broad Street on a scissor lift which refused to move due to excess weight. There has been enjoyment, signing up 3 new twin cities, Wrocław, Ramallah and Padova. And there has been disappointment. I only managed to reopen 3 pubs in Oxford during my term of office. The thing that I am most proud of, however, is having had the opportunity to raise awareness of mental health issues in this city and give support to my 2 good causes, the Oxford Samaritans and Oxford Nightline. I've managed to help raise some money for both of these good causes over the year, and I'd like to tell you how much has been raised. I really would like to tell you how much has been raised, but unfortunately the Co-op Bank have stopped online banking, and only the head of finance has the sufficient authority to access statements. I understand we are in the process of requesting new security details, but at least now I have my first question for the Executive Board Member for Finance at the next meeting of full council. But just to show that as a council we can be competent as well, I would like to thank all those whose quiet efficiency has made my year as Lord Mayor go so smoothly. All the town hall staff have been so wonderful over the past year, but especially David Hawkins, who has kept me, shall we say, in line brilliantly over the past year. David, you may be a sergeant at Mace, but to me you will always be my Captain Mannering. You think I don't hear you when you say, "Stupid boy," every time I pass, but I do. I'd like to thank my 2 drivers, Monica and Andrew, who have unfailingly got me to where I needed to be, and who are the absolute souls of discretion when it comes to stories about former Lord Mayors. Well, I hope so anyway. I'd like to thank my wife, the Lady Mayoress, for being an absolute rock over the past year, and for putting up with me both as Lord Mayor and as a human being. My biggest thanks, however, go to my executive personal assistant, Lizzie, who has been a paragon of efficiency and a font of good humour, and without whom this year would have been so much less fun. Thank you. I now would like to call on Councillor Dick Wolfe to propose Councillor Craig Simmons as the Lord Mayor for 2019-2020. Thank you.
Lieutenant, High Sheriff, distinguished guests, everyone. History is full of true believers who claimed that they were living in uniquely special times, maybe even the end times. The Christian scriptures in which I am steeped are full of such claims, with a divided Britain in constitutional crisis and a climate emergency threatening the very future of the human species. It's hard not to feel that we're living on the edge of some sort of cliff. The explosion of social media has created a dangerous world in which hard truth has been replaced by mere opinion. Winston Churchill, one of the founders of the European community, once said, "A lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on." That was in the 1940s. And did you know 36% of statistics are made up on the spot? Craig's degree in psychology from Hatfield Polytechnic prompted an interest in behaviour change. In particular, what information do people need if they are to become environmentally responsible? And ever since, that drive for the necessary information has shaped his career. One of the reasons for Craig and Elise relocating here to Oxford in 1994 was Mike Woodin, the late lamented Green Party spokesperson and highly respected councillor here in Oxford. Mike was honest, inspirational, but also factual, evidence-based. No surprise then that Mike was Craig's mentor, and Craig has sought to carry on his work. He's done this not only within the county and city councils, but through the company he founded, the companies he has subsequently founded, and the books he has co-authored. It was in the first book, Sharing Nature's Interest, in 2000, that the word footprinting was first used. It was an Amazon bestseller. In 2008 came the Z book, Zero Emission Development, co-authored with architect Bill Dunster. It won a Royal Institute of British Architects award and is still one of the best and most accessible publications on the subject. Craig's company was the first to offer ecological footprinting consultancy to European business and won the Queen's Award for Sustainability. There's a photo of Craig cycling through the gates of Buckingham Palace mixed up with the limousines. Craig asked where the bike racks were, and the guard said, "Park it where you like, sonny, it'll be perfectly safe in here." He will carry on that transport tradition by being Oxford's first zero-carbon mayor. His company developed into the fastest-growing consultancy in the UK, with 500 staff spread across every continent, and Craig is its chief technology and metrics officer. He was personally responsible for the carbon management strategy of the London Olympics. He's currently working on the Commonwealth Games and does a lot of work on agriculture. He's an advisor to the United Nations, the European Commission, European Environment Agency, DEFRA, and he's now Oxford's Lord Mayor. People look to Oxford to set an example. Craig has continually pushed for us to be ahead of the game and shown us how. That's why the Lord Mayor's car was a hybrid 15 years ago. Now, the idea of a business entrepreneur as Lord Mayor in such a city of privilege could tempt people to assume that Craig is one of the hated elite. But he comes from anything but an elite background. Growing up in a very far from well-off, but loving family in Walthamstow, many of whom are here, he was the first in the family to go to university. He is, if you like, a self-made man. But I somehow doubt he'd have got past the Dragon's Den panel. The climate emergency knocks Brexit into insignificance, and I sense that a head of steam is now building up for radical action. The hard, scientific information to inform behaviour change is starting to penetrate the walls of denial and misinformation. The truth is starting to get its pants on. It feels sometimes like we're preparing for a war on a warming planet, but this is a war in which our first salvo must be to sue for peace. We cannot win against the forces of nature. Churchill said, "It's no use saying we're doing our best. We have got to succeed in doing what is necessary." And he warned that trying to run away from a threat of danger will only dull it. But if you meet it promptly and without flinching, you will reduce the danger by half. Friends, I can't think of a person better equipped to be Oxford's first citizen at this point in our city's history. A world expert in what needs to be done and how to do it. And someone who lives the solutions himself. And if I may end on a more personal note, someone who has my immense respect, who has inspired me as Mike Woodin inspired him, but whose gifts, knowledge, insight, generosity of spirit, and capacity for sheer hard work I will never be able to match. A man for our time, and someone of whom the whole city can be proud.
I now call on Councillor Andrew Gant to second the motion.
Lord Lieutenant, distinguished guests, friends, Lord Mayor, if only I'd known the dress code was Hawaiian shirts. Maybe next year, there's a thought. It would be difficult to think of a politician anywhere in this country who so more obviously punches above his electoral weight, intellectually, politically, and, yes, morally, than Craig. Perhaps at national level, a similar example might be his party leader, Caroline Lucas. If you're not part of a big monolithic party machine, you have to rely on the authority with which you speak and the respect in which you are held. And I think it is obvious that Craig has achieved very considerable reserves of both over his long service to Oxford. Craig has, in his own words, been on just about every committee in the council except CEB, as he mentioned in his email to me, perhaps slightly pointedly. He's been Deputy Lord Mayor, he's been Sheriff, he's a Freeman of the City, and he's a Fellow of the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment, which means that he is, and I quote, a proven visionary leader in business and across the environment and sustainability profession, which must be true because that's what it says on the website. He's chaired the Finance Panel, leading on key initiatives on Treasury management strategy, investing in housing, ethical investment, and was the first to recommend the inclusion of social value in our procurement policies, which has now been agreed. He has promoted ideas which have later appeared by that familiar, mysterious process in administration policies, like extending the loan to the low-carbon hub. Craig's chairmanship of the Scrutiny Committee was a masterclass in using a room full of strongly held, well-informed, but sometimes differing views to achieve something constructive. Taking over from him as chair was a bit like following the late and much-missed Jean Fuchs as a ward councillor. If you want to know how to do it, just do what the other guy did. In both cases, easier said than done, of course, but not a bad place to start. To give just one example, the Strategic Spatial Plan is currently chuntering its way through various bureaucratic processes. I can see some eyes glazing over, but just go with me on this one. In both scrutiny processes, Craig was absolutely insistent that the plan have the principle of climate change mitigation embedded in every aspect from the start. He's right, of course, and it will be. You can take people with you if you are right and you speak with authority. Ideas become mainstream. It's thanks to people like Craig that green politics, with whatever kind of G you happen to choose, are now part of the mainstream. Craig will certainly worthily uphold the dignity of his office, but I'm sure he won't stand too much on the flim-flam. He's already told us that he intends to cycle to as many engagements as he possibly can, but he's not allowed to wear the chains. So he's having a t-shirt printed with the chains on the front. We all look forward very much to seeing it in action. He says that his pet peeve is being mistaken for Councillor Ed Turner. Can't see it myself. Which apparently is a good thing when you're talking to senior officers because they treat you properly, but less good when you're talking to an angry resident. Away from council duties, Craig is a keen cyclist and sailor, though presumably not at the same time. In 2010, he cycled from Oxford to Cambridge to raise money for the British Heart Foundation. So clearly no need for an expressway then. In 2014, he sailed across the Atlantic, raising money for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. It's great, of course, to welcome Elise back as Lady Mayoress. Elise was, of course, herself a very distinguished Lord Mayor of our city, which means that she's gone from doing the top job to being the consort in what you might perhaps describe as a sort of reverse Hillary Clinton manoeuvre. The analogy doesn't hold good in every respect. But at least don't forget that you now have to get on the back seat of the mayoral tandem. Craig, you'll be a fantastic Lord Mayor and a continuing credit to our city. Your choice of charities to support speak for themselves. Your mayoralty will be a celebration of the values that everyone in this room, and I firmly believe the vast majority of people in our great city, hold in common. Let's use this year as a celebration of those values of welcome and inclusivity, starting on Thursday of next week. Craig, I'm honoured to second your election as our Lord Mayor, and I look forward to working with you during the 12 months ahead and for many years after that.
Councillors, the motion has been put and seconded. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. Those against? That motion is carried.
Lieutenant, High Sheriff, ladies and gentlemen, please rise and welcome our Lord Mayor, Councillor Craig Simmons.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Well, thank you for your support. I now have to read this declaration of office and sign it, and then Chief Executive will sign it. So, I, Councillor Craig Simmons, having been appointed to the office of Lord Mayor of the City of Oxford, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. So, you need a pen to sign it. Well, let's wait for signing blood, maybe. Well, thank you very much. The signing is done. And it's thank you very much to Colin and all the outgoing civic office holders. So here's the official speech that I'm expected to give.
Not that I'm used to doing far more informal things, but I have to write it down, otherwise I don't stick to time. So, Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, friends, family and honoured guests. And I think just the sort of using the word honoured guests, I've always found that a little bit odd, because actually we're all honoured guests here, because you've done something great for the community, you're elected councillors, or you're dignitaries who've done something great for our community, or you're my family and friends, or family and friends of the other civic office holders who are here because you are honoured. So you're all honoured, and you're all welcome. But I do want to say a few sort of special thanks to my parents, who've made great efforts to be here, my sister and my brother, who've come a long way, and all the various hangers-on that come along with them. And of course my daughter, Berry, who's there somewhere, down there. And she's got some friends along, and also of course my lovely wife, Lady Maris Leeds, who as much has been talked about her already. And thank you very much for attending, and of course thank you to the proposer and seconder for their amazingly kind words. I was sitting there sort of shuffling in my seat, not quite sure whether to smile or hide my face. So what does it actually mean to be Lord Mayor? And I've given it quite a lot of thought. I mean, I have a fair idea of what it entails in one sense. You know, I've been Deputy Lord Mayor, I've just been the Sheriff. I'm not even the first Lord Mayor in my household. And I've been given this huge tome by the Civic Office saying all the things I must do and not do while I'm Lord Mayor. But I'm told it's being Oxford's first citizen, which sounds a great weight of responsibility. And I know that I'm the latest in a long line of mayors and Lord Mayors, in fact the 60th Lord Mayors, and certain great symmetry because I'm going to be 60 in my year in office. So I actually researched all past mayors and Lord Mayors, and to try and get some inspiration. Actually, I found out, to be frank, they were actually quite a mixed bunch. The present company accepted, of course. And there are undoubtedly some great first citizens. I mean, we've had 3 have blue plaques in the city because of their service to the city. 23 were knighted. 45 also served as the city's members of parliament. And of course, many were later recognised for their long service, being conferred the honour of alderman or alderwoman, and most recently Bob Price, the late Jean Fuchs, and Jill Sanders. So despite this, and all those sort of facts and figures, I really didn't feel I was getting any closer to understand what the essence of being a Lord Mayor really was. So I decided to write to all 22 Lord Mayors in the country. And I said to them, what's your advice? I'm about to become Lord Mayor. What would you sort of advice would you give me? And I also met up with Magic, the Lord Mayor of Sheffield, who's one of the more prominent ones, and I thought he'd give me some good sort of offbeat advice. And actually very few responded to me, which I think is an indication maybe I should have taken it on board earlier, the amount of work that these sorts of roles involve. But anyway, I'm very grateful to those that did respond, and these are actually some of the responses I got, some of the helpful advice I provided. Always make sure you have sufficient change with you for raffle tickets. When you and your consort arrive at events, head off in different directions. That way you can cover more ground. Which sounds to me more like the early stages of divorce rather than sort of advice for a Lord Mayor. And this is, always carry business cards, which I thought was reasonable, and they said give them to children. The advice went on, because behind every child there's a voter. I think that's more a sort of re-election strategy than anything else. Another thing, even if you're told you don't need to give a speech, be prepared to give one anyway. And they've even gave me some helpful introductory lines. It said, if you're caught out, say this: thank you for your contribution to X, where X is the city or the place where you're at. So it's a very generic introduction to speech. And the other one was make friends with your sergeant at Mace. He'll know every wrinkle. If he doesn't know, he'll be able to tell you how to make it up, which is quite good. Another one, don't be too bound by tradition. It's just a way that dead people remain in control. And perhaps my favourite is always carry hand sanitizer. You will frequently be shaking hands with many people and then having a finger buffet. So, and of course I did ask Colin Cook for his sage advice. His robust response was, always make sure that you have enough wine glasses. So now, I mean, but I did actually hear one piece of, I thought, more useful advice perhaps that I did hear time and time again. And it's probably the thing that all my fellow councillors want to hear the least, is that be yourself. So I will try to be myself because that was the advice I was given, and who am I to disagree? Now it's traditional for Lord Mayor to sort of nominate 2 good causes to support during their year in office. And the selected organisations, as Colin said, get to benefit from additional profile and funds from various mayoral activities. So I've decided to focus very much on 2 themes that indeed Dick alluded to. In the light of the sort of UK's disintegrating international reputation, I've decided to do what I can to sort of encourage and maintain our good international relationships we do enjoy as a city. And we obviously have an expanded twinning programme. 1 in 5 residents come from outside of the UK, and we've got hundreds of thousands of visitors each year. And whatever happens regarding our role within Europe, we have our own city's international reputation to protect. And with this in mind, what better way to emphasise our welcoming nature as a city and how engaged we are than by supporting Asylum Welcome, who do some excellent work within the city. So they're one of the charities I've to support, and they are in my ward, and I've supported them in the past through my sort of ward member allowance, but I think it's very appropriate that I continue that in consistency, especially in the light of the themes I've chosen. Secondly, as has been said, councillors unanimously supported the declaration of a climate emergency earlier this year, and the council are committed to running a citizens' assembly, which I think is an excellent idea. And the climate crisis is a matter of increasing public concern for all the reasons that Dick mentioned, and rightly so. And since the Oxford's declaration in UK Parliament has also followed suit, what happens in Oxford eventually happens in national government, so that's really great to hear. And given my own interest and experience in this area, which is rather embarrassing recounting of my past, I decided to do what I can to raise awareness of climate change, both through some public engagements and getting every opportunity to speak. So I'm asking schools if they want me to come along and speak about climate change, and obviously if I get the opportunity through engagements, I will do that. But also, thanks to the efforts, I must say, of a number of council officers, and in collaboration with the Low Carbon Hub, I'm very pleased to announce a new Lord Mayor's Climate Fund. And what that will do is based on existing infrastructure that the Low Carbon Hub have, any donations from the public and from events can go into that fund. That goes towards renewable energy, new renewable energy capacity within the city, but also the interest on those payments will go into the city's small grants fund, giving a social benefit in the longer term as well. So I'm also committed, as has been said, to being the Lord Mayor's first carbon neutral mayor. I thought I should actually try that out. And the mayors do particularly a lot of travelling, and so that's really the challenge around doing that. And I'll be endeavouring to use the most sustainable forms of transport that's practical and possible in the circumstance. And it's somewhat helped, of course, last week by the new Lord Mayor's car, which is even half the emissions of even the previous Toyota Prius, which was very frugal in itself. So that's a great innovation, which will certainly help. But I've also asked that the Lord Mayor's bike, and we do have a bike, is dragged out of the dusty basement and polished off, serviced, and had a little crest put on the front. But of course, even the Mini has some carbon emissions, and so I'm trying to compensate for any residual emissions that will happen during the year from the travel, and to avoid impacting on the public purse. My own employer, Anthesis, has agreed to cover the cost of those carbon offsets to make my year in office carbon neutral. So not without some trepidation, I'm very much looking forward to my year in office. And of course I won't be able to say yes to every invitation, no one does. I've already turned down one invitation to bungee jump from a crane 175 feet above Gloucester Green, and I've passed that on to the deputy Lord Mayor. But on the upside, I will, tomorrow, my first day in office, be meeting Archie's dad, the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, and hosting 2 receptions, so not bad for my first full day in office. So Thank you, honoured guest. Indeed, it is me that is honoured by being your Lord Mayor, and I'll try not to make a mess of it, so thank you very much. As your Lord Mayor is in fact the election of the Deputy Lord Mayor and Sheriff, the bungee jumping Deputy Lord Mayor, for 2019-20. I call upon Councillor Liz Wade to propose Councillor Mohammed Al Khan as the new Deputy Lord Mayor.
First of all, congratulations, Lord Mayor. I look forward to seeing the new Lord Mayor's bike in action. I think that's going to be on the front page of the Oxford Times very soon. My warmest good wishes to you and to Elise on your election. I have no doubt that this will be a rollercoaster year in European, national and local politics. I prophesy that there will be memorable times ahead for all of us, sitting together in this chamber tonight, but especially for you as our Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress. But to turn to the business in hand, Lord Lieutenant, Lord Mayor, Deputy Lord Mayor and Sheriff, honoured guests and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to propose the election of my colleague, and more than a colleague, my friend, Mohammed Al Khan, to the post of Deputy Lord Mayor. Many of you here will have come to know Altaf in many different ways. As a county councillor for 8 years, as a city councillor, first for Headington Hill and Northway and then for Headington for the last 13 years, as a member of the English Council, as a board member of the Asian Cultural Centre working with other political parties, as a campaigner for BAME recognition for our 12,000 strong Asian population in this city, as a campaigner in the UK for the future of Kashmir, and for a UN-backed referendum law. We are a party that supports referendums. Apologies for the politics. Altaf attributes his political involvement to the inspiration of his father, as many of us in all political parties do. Happily, Altaf's father was able to be here at Altaf's mayor-making in 2016, a great moment for the whole family and for us as well to welcome him as our Lord Mayor. Altaf's father was a local councillor in Kashmir, and from a young age, Altaf was putting up posters, erecting banners, going to public meetings. Early experiences run deep, as many of us again in this chamber will remember. Then, as a young man, he moved from Kashmir to Oxford, and found, as many of us here have done, what an extraordinary place this is. Altaf's children were born and are growing up here, so he has a personal stake in the future of the city. But more than family, he's always wanted to give something back to the wider community. And so for 14 years, he has served this city, engaging with local issues, and with national and international ones, and with charities close to his heart. And this he will continue to do. Altaf's breadth of vision has been a huge asset, both to our party and to the people of Oxford, and to his roots in Kashmir, which are never forgotten, and shouldn't be forgotten. He manages to find time for all these different strands, primarily because he's a people person, non-judgmental and committed to giving his residents the support they need when they need it. I know Altaf will be an excellent Deputy Lord Mayor to Craig, and I ask you to support his election. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Councillor John Tanner to second the nomination.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and congratulations on being elected. Ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, it gives me great pleasure to second Altaf Khan. I'm particularly pleased that in this council, it doesn't matter which party you belong to, it matters on how long your service has been as to whether you become the Lord Mayor or the Sheriff or the Deputy Lord Mayor, and I think that's a very sensible tradition and practice. Altaf Khan is a man in the middle. He was born in Kashmir, in the middle of neither Pakistan nor India, but in the middle. He came to this country and joined the Liberal Democrats, or the Liberal Party, between the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, so again he's a man in the middle. And now he finds himself between the new Lord Mayor and the Sheriff as the Deputy Lord Mayor, the man in the middle. I'm just very impressed that he's come back for a second go, having already been Lord Mayor. Now, you know that there used to be a Liberal Democrat slogan, and it used to go something like this. What do we want? Not very much. When do we want it? Oh, any time will do. Well, those are the days of the past. The slogan has now changed. It's now, and I hesitate to use this word in such exalted company, but it's now bollocks to Brexit. And I don't know who is more surprised, him or me, to discover that on this issue and on the people's vote, we're in exactly the same position. So that's another reason for giving me great pleasure to second Mohammed Al-Taf Khan. He's a great man, he'll do a great job, and I have a great honour in seconding him.
Well, it gives me great pleasure to formally propose that vote for the nomination of Mohammed Al-Taf Khan for Deputy Lord Mayor. So this is only the councillors get to vote on this. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. I have pleasure in officially welcoming Mohammed Al-Taf Khan as the new Deputy Lord Mayor.
I, Councillor Mohammed Al-Taf Khan, having been appointed to the office of Deputy Lord Mayor of Oxford City, declare that I take this office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfill the duty of it according to the best of my judgment and ability. And I do have my pen.
Well, my next duty is to elect the Sheriff of Oxford for the year 2019-2020. So I have great pleasure to call Councillor Ross Smith to propose Councillor Steve Goddard as the next Sheriff of Oxford.
Congratulations first to you both, to Craig and to myself. I think it's rather wonderful that we're going to have you both as Lord Mayor and Lord Mayor this year. My Lord Lieutenant, High Sheriff, Lord Mayor, Deputy Lord Mayor, Sheriff. Distinguished guests, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to propose Councillor Steve Goddard to serve as the Sheriff of Oxford from this day until our annual meeting in May 2020. I've known Steve for over a quarter of a century, In that time, I've got to know him as a considerate, courteous, environmentally conscious, intelligent gentleman, and one of the best friends to have on your quiz team. Indeed, many of you may have heard him on Radio 4's Brain of Britain quiz recently, where he had a stonking, outstanding win, taking him through to the semi-finals. Many will also know of his interest in the bird world. His interest has taken him around the world to Gambia, Costa Rica, Tanzania, but he always reminds me that we have some wonderful bird watching opportunities locally. Among them are his favourites, Otmore, Brighton Woods, and of course, Wolvercote Common, which is just a short walk from his home. Being environmentally conscious, his favourite mode of travel is the bicycle. Indeed, he's never learnt to drive, telling me he's never even taken a driving lesson. So he will compliment our Lord Mayor very well, I think, this year. Steve came to St John's College, Oxford in 1987 as a student and met his wife, Julia, who was at St Hilda's College in their first term. Never moving from Oxford, they have 2 children and live in Wolvercote village and are immersed in the village life there. Julia is a parish administrator at St Peter's Church, where Stephen sings in the choir and also serves on the PC. He is one of Wolvercote's wildlife group leaders, encouraging children to take an interest in the exploration of the natural world. Oh, so many things. Steve also sings in the Oxford University Press Choir and is a French lecturer. As a new member of Oxford City Council, I am not entirely sure what the full role of Sheriff of Oxford exactly entails, apart from the annual roundup on Port Meadow, which the much-loved and much-missed Jean Fuchs undertook on horseback. I understand Councillor Goddard will not be saddling up, though. So, wanting to know more about the role of Sheriff, I took to the internet over the weekend and found there's an association dedicated to sheriffs, the National Association of City and Town Sheriffs of England and Wales. The acronym is NACSU. I think that's how they pronounce it. NACSU doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but their site has a detailed history of this role. The role of sheriff actually stretches back hundreds of years to the time of the Norman invasion of England, and possibly before that. Now, if you'd like to know more about the history of sheriffs, then I can recommend their site. I am sure Steve Goddard will do the City of Oxford very proud in his year as Sheriff. Can we all wish Steve an enjoyable year in this, his first year in a civic role for the city, and good luck for the Brain of Britain semi-final. Thank you.
And Councillor Mary Clarkson is formally seconding the nomination.
I'd like to begin first of all by congratulating you, Lord Mayor and Deputy Lord Mayor. I think it's going to be a very exciting year, and I'm really looking forward to our new civic year. I'm delighted to second Stephen Goddard as Sheriff of Oxford. Steve and I actually go back a long way. When I was first elected as a councillor for Marston, we were living in North Oxford and Steve was my own ward councillor. We sat on the old Environmental Health Committee together, and once I remember he was a rather surprising substitution on the Women's Subcommittee. As Councillor Smith has said, Steve is a university lecturer in French literature. Now, back in the 2010 general election, a Labour canvasser was out knocking on doors and was told by one voter, "Oh, I'm voting for Steve Goddard. He's an expert on Flaubert." The kind of response you really only get in Oxford. And for a few weeks after that, local Labour Party psephologists would mutter nervously about the Flaubert factor and try to calculate its likely impact on the general elections. As a long-time resident of Wolvercote and local councillor, I am sure that being the Sheriff of Oxford will be a particular joy for Steve, given his interest in wildlife and birds. He will have particular responsibility for inspecting Port Meadow for ragwort and taking part in the annual roundup of horses. And there is also, of course, the traditional Aunt Sally match at the Plough, where a city council team takes on the Freemen of Oxford. And I thought perhaps this year, the city would perhaps be more likely to win if they had a pub quiz competition instead. Because again, as Councillor Smith has said, Steve Goddard raced ahead in the quarterfinals of Brain of Britain. So while the city council's team might be embarrassed in an Aunt Sally match, I feel sure that a competitor who can answer authoritatively on subjects ranging from Malvolio to Metal Mickey would be bound to restore our fortunes. Steve is a friendly, collegiate councillor who, the kind of person I can always go to sound out about things, and I'm sure he will make a really good sheriff, and I wish you all the best of luck for a successful year.
Stephen Goddard's nomination as the next Sheriff of Oxford to the vote. So all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And congratulations, Steve.
Unlike my best prepared colleague, I didn't have a pen with me. I, Councillor Stephen Goddard, having been appointed to the office of Sheriff of Oxford City Council, declare that I take that office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties of it according to the best of my judgment and ability.
I'd like to now call Susan Brown, got your name right this time, to the podium to propose a vote, outgoing vote of thanks to the outgoing civic office holders.
Monsieur le Maire, félicitations. Mesdames et Messieurs, and don't worry, that is absolutely as far as I intend to go in French today. A word of explanation. I was telling my father on Friday that I was giving the speech of thanks today, and I was somewhat surprised at just how impressed he was at this news. And he really was just, you're really, that's amazing. And it turned out that, famously deaf as he is, he misheard me. Instead of thinking I was giving a speech of thanks, he thought I was giving a speech in French. Thankfully for all of us, particularly me, and particularly considering that I had entirely forgotten Steve's expertise in this area, that is not the case. I am particularly delighted to be able to give this speech, as I believe that the leader above all has particular reason to be thankful to our civic office holders. Earlier this year, here's another French connection, I was talking to Monsieur le Maire from our twin city of Grenoble, Eric Piolle. He was very envious of our system of separation of the civic responsibilities undertaken by our civic office holders, who attend events representing the city in a non-political fashion, and the separate role undertaken by our leader and cabinet system in political decision-making roles. In Grenoble, he has to do both. And in addition, he spends a large part of his weekends marrying people, which is definitely not a task which falls to either the leader or to civic office holders in this city, luckily for all of us. By the way, he shares that task out with his cabinet, so yeah, we should all be grateful for that. So thankfully, as they have more than enough to do, it is not a task that our civic office holders have to take on, but they do take on plenty of other things. Another reason that I was particularly delighted to be able to give today's speech of thanks is because I can't think of a better Lord Mayor than the one I'm now saying thank you to. Many of us said at the beginning of this year that we thought this was a role that Colin was born to undertake, and I think he has proven that to be the case this year. The Lord Mayor gets invited to many, many events throughout the year, and in addition, Colin this year has made a point of trying to invite as many city residents as possible to meet the Lord Mayor. Now, those of us who know Colin know that his hospitality is always legendary, and so it's no surprise that this year, as Lord Mayor, so many people have enjoyed their first visit to the Lord Mayor's parlour. Another major task for the Lord Mayor is to chair our City Council meetings, keeping 47 other politicians in line, making sure that everyone feels they have a chance to speak, but keeping people to time so that we're not there all night is indeed a skill. And again, Colin's light touch, sense of fairness and skills at chairing have been exceptional this year and have ensured that our council meetings have been very well run and kept to time. I asked Colin before writing this speech what his first engagement was as Lord Mayor. It turned out it was a dinner at Queen's College. Unfortunately for Colin, the dinner, although it was scheduled to finish at about 10 p.m, actually went on considerably later. They were still in the middle of dinner at 10 p.m. As a result, when Colin returned to the town hall to return the Lord Mayor's chains, somewhere near midnight, he discovered that town hall staff had been scouring the city centre for him. For some reason, their search seemed to focus on the local pubs between Queen's College and the town hall. But I am reliably informed by Colin that he had not been in the pubs and had indeed been at Queen's College. Colin's last engagement yesterday was fittingly one with a suitably international bent for our Lord Mayor, who's been such a loyal supporter of our twinning arrangements. Yesterday, Colin partook in a vodka tasting session with the Perm Association, Perm being our twin city in Russia. Colin, you're looking very well today. I'm pleased to see that. During the course of this year, Colin must have been one of the most travelled Lord Mayors in recent history, visiting Perm, Wrocław, Padua, Bonn and Leiden at his own expense. He's also signed new twinning agreements with, as he already mentioned, Wrocław, Padua and Ramallah. Colin tells me that the Palestinian Authority ambassador who attended the signing was particularly impressed that he was the councillor for Jericho. I have, by custom and reflecting his share of the workload, focused particularly on Colin's role as Lord Mayor, but the important supporting roles of our Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Sarge Malik, and the Sheriff, now Lord Mayor, Councillor Craig Simmons, also deserve our thanks. Even if Craig did turn tradition on his head and instead of subbing for the Lord Mayor, ended up having to ask the Lord Mayor to substitute for him for the traditional duty of the inspection of Port Meadow. You can reverse that this year if you like, Craig. But seriously, thank you to all of our outgoing civic office holders for their hard work, and I wish all the new office holders, Lord Mayor, Deputy Lord Mayor and Sheriff, an excellent year representing the City Council and engaging with all the many excellent community organisations and individuals that add to the richness of our city life. Thank you to everyone here today for all the work that you do for our city. Thank you.
you, Lord Lieutenant High Sheriff, honoured guests. It gives me great pleasure to second this vote of thanks, but I would like to start off by saying warmest congratulations, Craig, to you, to Elise, to the whole family. It feels very Eurovision to be saying, I'm sure you're going to be having a great year, it's been a great show. I have actually, Craig, always been struck by a little bit of adder about you, and so that feels particularly appropriate. It also feels appropriate to be mentioning that in connection with Colin, because those of us who remember his rendition of Good King Wenceslas at the Carol concert will see that as being in the very best traditions of British Eurovision entries. It's been mentioned already, Lord Mayor, that Colin's had a very international year. The Polish family picnic recently saw some dance moves which were quite unparalleled. Colin enjoyed Carnival in the Rhineland so very much, I think they thought they'd got him for keeps. And that caused a certain amount of concern. I was really pleased that Colin welcomed only recently our Rose Hill football club into the parlour, one of a very, very large number of guests. I was also very relieved that in another historical first, he served the group orange squash. Asking Lord Mayor's staff how the year had gone, they said it was absolutely tremendous. If you want to know how good a Lord Mayor's been, just look at the size of the presents in the corner. And apparently it's been a very, very good crop. So Father Christmas was very kind to Colin. Colin did a grand job in overcoming injury this year as well. People may know that he injured himself for a while he was off the bicycle. There was a scurrilous photograph which was circulating of Colin at the helm of one of those motorised buggies, a sort of shop mobility thing, with a very richly laden handlebar basket full of vodka, gin, all sorts of things like that to keep him going. Thankfully, those products worked their medicinal properties, and he was back on his bicycle very soon with socks tucked in trademark fashion. So it's been a wonderful year. It's been a wonderful year, greatly supported by Saj, by Craig, of course, particularly by Helen, and really a year to be proud of for Colin as well. So thank you very much indeed to all our civic office holders for what they did.
And indeed, I'd like to add my thanks to the outgoing office holders who have done a superb job of representing the city. So the formal part of the business is now closed, so I'd very much like to invite you to join us after the new Deputy Lord Mayor and the new Sheriff in the main hall for reception. So thank you very much.